I am financially free, and you can be as well. When I was 21 years old, I became a millionaire. I'm now 26 years old, and my net worth is in the multiple millions. If you don't believe me, which is fair enough, this came in the post recently, which is an award you get from ClickFunnels for having made more than $10 million with their platform. I got this a long time ago, but it took a long time to arrive because I'm in Dubai. So I'm going to share with you 10 lessons that I learned to get to this point so you can do the same thing. So lesson number one is that financial freedom is defined to me as when you have enough money in your reserves or in your bank account such that low risk, low return investments can sustain and subsidize the lifestyle that you want to live. Financial freedom is not about making $10,000 a month, or it's not about how much money you make per month. It's not about whether you've got cars or watches. It's about whether or not your base level lifestyle that you're happy with can be sustained by how much cash you have in the bank against your assets and the interest from them. And so the way that I achieved financial freedom was to accrue so much capital in cash and in steady investments like bonds, just super low risk, super low return investments like 3 to 4 to 5% return investments. And to allow for that return to subsidize my lifestyle. Until you've done that, you're not really financially free. You can make 6 figures online, you can make a couple of $100,000 here and there, but I can tell you that if you make $10,000 in 1 month, after tax and after all of this stuff that comes with making that money, your one business class flight to Bali is going to knock out half your wealth for the month. So financial freedom, by definition to me, is when the amount of cash you have in the bank or the amount of low interest, low risk assets you have subsidize the lifestyle that you're happy with. And until you've done that, you're not financially free. So I wanted to start with a definition of sort of lesson number one. You have to think about this long term, and all the lessons that I'm going to give you are going to sort of feed into this definition. So the second thing that I learned on my journey is that it's not about it's not about your company, it's about you. And what I mean by that is your business or the vehicle that you choose to use to become a millionaire, whether it is dropshipping, Amazon FBA, gardening, any business model you want to choose, it's not about the business model you choose, because they all work. Look at any business model, whether it's online or offline, chances are you're going to find hundreds, if not thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people who have made themselves millionaires using that model. And so what you've got to realize when you start your business is businesses don't fail, people do. It's a really important thing to understand. And so when you pick the business, it's not about the business you pick, it's about yourself. It's about your skill sets, your belief systems, your character traits, and how well you can do as an entrepreneur. And so the easiest form of cope or delusion for entrepreneurs that fail is, oh, that business didn't work or that market was saturated. Well, it's a delusion, because the chances are is there are other people in your market with that business model that have become successful. And so whenever you're trying to become successful and become a millionaire and build a company, it always helps to be introspective and look at yourself as to reasons as to why you're not growing and developing, as opposed to the business model that you're in. The third thing that I learned is that competition is fantastic and competition is great. I can give you an anecdote here. Well, it's not an anecdote, it's not a personal anecdote, but I can give you a lesson from history. At the beginning of the end of the Republic in the Roman Empire, Caesar died and was, replaced or ascended by a guy called Octavian, who became Augustus, who was effectively the first emperor of Rome outside of the Republic after the dictatorships. And at the beginning of Augustus's reign, he had to battle with a guy called Mark Antony and Cleopatra. And Augustus was an incredible, incredible emperor. And what happened after years of his long reign, once he destroyed all of his enemies, is he kind of started to get a little bit complacent and lazy towards the end of his reign. And that was because he no longer had any political or military competitors. Now, he didn't let his foot off the gas completely, but historians say that he didn't achieve as much as he could have because he wasn't challenged. He had no rivals towards the end of his career, and he got quite lazy and bad things happened. And so what you've got to realize in business is that competition is fantastic. Everyone starting a business, they look for niches or markets where they want the blue ocean strategy, but competition is a sign of life. Imagine that you're, a fish and you're trying to decide what pond you should live in. Well, if you're a fish and trying to decide what pond you should live in, which is akin to trying to start a business and deciding what niche or what market or business to go into, you want to pick a pond where there's other fish in there. Because if you pick a pond with no other fish, it's an indication that no fish can survive in that pond. You want competition. And what competition does is it brings the best out in you, it progresses the market, it forces you to be better. And not only that, A, you can't avoid it, but B, you want it. You should want rivalry. You should want something to force you to become better and to, stop your complacency. Otherwise you become like an emperor who basically has no rivals and just sort of stagnates and sits pretty happily. It's important. If you look at any great organization, anything that's ever happened that's amazing throughout the history of the world, whether it's in nature, in business, militarily, or anywhere else, you're always going to find that there's competition. And it's kind of like watching a superhero movie where there's no villain, right? The hero can only manifest if there is a villain. And without the dragon, there is no knight. So it's the competition that makes you and forms you into the millionaire. You need it, you want it, trust me. The fourth thing is you want to learn to think in really long-term time horizons. And this might be a hard thing to do at the moment, but you want to start developing the practice and trying to figure out and learn how to think in years, not months and weeks. Most people, they can't see beyond the next 24 hours. Their plans, their strategies, and the projections of their life don't really ascend anything beyond next week, which might be a birthday party they have to attend. Real successful entrepreneurs, they think in 40 to 50 year time horizons. You might not be able to do that yet, and I'm still even struggling with that one, although I'm getting a lot better at it. But my point here is that, you don't really want to rush getting wealthy. It's not something that happens overnight. You can't get rich quick. Unless you buy some crazy crypto coin and get completely lucky or pull off a GameStop play, it's not going to happen quickly. And so you need to learn to think in long-term time horizons. And the easiest way for you to do this, if I give you a concrete piece of advice, is to imagine that every single decision you make regarding your personal life and your business has ripple effects out into the future. And what you have to do is ask yourself with every decision you make, whether it's to eat something or go somewhere or see someone or travel somewhere or start a business or whatever, how does this affect me in 10 years' time? Is it good or bad? And there'll be a net positive or a net negative based on the decision. And it's really as simple as that. That's how you think long term. The easiest way to beat your competitors and to beat people in your market is just to think in longer term time horizons in them and make decisions that will pay off in the future. For example, in my market, a lot of people buy Lamborghinis and Ferraris and like 300 grand watches, and they go around and then they tell everyone about these watches and these cars. And I know I'm one to talk with the house, right? But it serves a purpose of, fiduciary use. But I know that all these guys that are putting all their money into these depreciating liabilities, that in the long term, my little compounded efforts over the next 20 years, I'll beat them. You might perceive them to be beating me now with their cars and their models and their yachts and their private jet flights and stuff like that. But I'm quite happy in business class or even economy sometimes, knowing that keeping that money and just having it compound slightly every day, tiny bit, will allow me to beat them in the long term, which is all that matters. So that's that. The next thing, which is kind of going to come off of what I just told you, next lesson is to resist the new money urges. So if you want to make money badly enough and you want to become a millionaire and you want to become financially free with all your might, you will make it happen. And I can attest to this because I literally did. I had no idea where to start. I had no idea where to go, what to do, who to learn from. I didn't know what I was doing at the beginning of my journey to becoming a millionaire. And the thing with that is that I just wanted it so bad. It was all I thought. I sacrificed everything. It was all I thought about for years and years and years on end, was just working on this thing and trying to figure it out. And the thing with making the money is when you do it, you're going to have what I call new money urges, where all of your insecurities and all of your narcissisms and neuroses and all of these psychological problems you've got that you think will be solved by money will manifest as soon as you have it. And so right now you're probably working for a Ferrari or to go and sit on a beach in Bali or something. And that's okay. And I'm not saying you shouldn't reward yourself, but I'm saying the longer that you can delay the gratification of these impulsive childish needs, the more successful you will become. Primary example of this, when I was making 50 to 100 grand a month at 20, 19 years old, whatever, I fought the urge every day to post my Stripe screenshots on my personal Instagram. Now I deleted my personal Instagram because I don't need it anymore. And you want to resist these urges because these impulses are going to come. You're going to want to go shopping and buy this thing or, try and impress this girl in this way, shape and form, like by buying this thing. Just resist the urges, resist the impulses for as long as you can possibly sustain the resistance. Otherwise, they're going to get you, they're going to eat away at your wealth, and they're going to destroy you. Prime example, I know someone that started making 20 grand a month recently, and they've already rented a Ferrari. I'm like, brother, what you make in a year, you can't even afford to buy the Ferrari with. So after tax, if you can't buy it in cash comfortably, then you can't afford it. That's the rule, okay? I waited for 5 years of making like over $1 million a year before I bought my dream car, which I actually recently got rid of because I don't need it. The next lesson, the 6th lesson, is that focus is power. And what I mean by this is when you're starting your company, or when you're trying to become successful, whether it's through a career, you want just to pick one thing. So one market, one product, one niche, that's just 1 million. The ability to focus on just one thing at a time is an extremely common trait that I have shared between all my friends who are millionaires. You just want to pick one thing. Just pick, like this idea that the average millionaire has 7 streams of income is a complete lie. And I can tell you that as someone who actually is a millionaire. And the reason that you think that the average millionaire has 7 streams of income is because people who have tried to sell you courses on passive income, which by the way does not exist until you've got millions of cash in the bank, the idea of building passive income is easy to say, oh, the average millionaire has 7 streams of income, so you need to build my thing so that you can have passive income. Passive income is rubbish. It's not real. It doesn't exist. It only exists once you have pre-claimed leverage. Like for example, once you have a couple of million in the bank and you have interest on that, which effectively is passive income. Or once you've made millions of dollars and you can go and buy property or other fixed, assets that will return you money slowly over time with low risk, then you have passive income. But until you've built active income significantly, you can't have passive income. It just doesn't work. It's a scam and it doesn't work. And that's just from one dude who's actually figured it out to someone who hasn't. So focus is power. You want to pick one thing and you want to go all in on that. You don't want to try and start multiple businesses. You don't want to try and have multiple products or have multiple niches. You just want to sell one thing to one person. And what we're doing here is we're learning how to just solve one problem. Because my thinking here to you is, who makes more money, the general practice doctor or the heart surgeon, right? Or who's more successful, the person who has 10 different businesses or the person who has one business? You might say, oh, but that person has 10 businesses. But the problem is you can't compete with people who just have one. So specialism and focus is the key. Make sure you do it. The 7th lesson is value over popularity. And you'll see this a lot online at the moment, where it's becoming, it's always been around, but it's becoming rampant at the moment, where a lot of people are making flashy lifestyle videos and vlogs, and like they're showing off their Lamborghinis and like their lifestyles and their models and all this stuff. And I have nothing against it. I think the game's the game. If that's the vehicle of traffic you want to use to sell your courses, I don't care. Fair enough, right? But once again, this comes back to long-term thinking. There's a quote that Benjamin Graham said to Warren Buffett. So Warren Buffett's this, he's worth like $100 billion. And Benjamin Graham, who mentored him in his early days, basically said to Warren Buffett that in the short term, the market is a voting machine. And in the long term, the market is a weighing machine. Build companies that want to be weighed. And what this basically means is that like in the short term, the online market or any market you're in will pick companies that are popular, and the companies and people that are the best at marketing and showing off their life and flexing will seem to be winning. But it's a delusion, because the real companies that win in the long term with the elapsement of time, the real grim reaper of business is time, it will wipe you out if you're not careful, are the companies that build true value. And an example of this you can find with BlackBerry versus Apple. Some of you might not remember this, but BlackBerry used to make these phones that were quite chunky and they had little keyboards on them and stuff. And BlackBerry was an extremely popular business. It was a very popular product, very clever, savvy marketing behind it. Like it was kind of, it kind of went, wow, everyone had a BlackBerry for a while. And the thing is it didn't sustain, because over time, the value of Apple's products, which were just so much better, outweighed the value of BlackBerry's product, and therefore BlackBerry failed. And this is the easiest strategy to win in business, and it comes back to thinking long term, is the easiest way to beat someone is just by building a better product than them. And the thing is that the more time you spend on your product, the more time you spend on building the thing that delivers the value for your customers, means that you spend less time on marketing in the short term. And so in the short term, your competitors will make more money than you because they spend all their time on marketing and not product. But in the long term, that product will manifest, good results for your clients, and you'll become the go-to person for your solution or for your thing. And it will then become a question of, I need help with X, where do I go? And people will say, you should go to Charlie, or you should go to Marcus, or whatever you name it. So don't worry about the short term. Don't worry if someone's beating you in the short term or if it's perceived that they're beating you, because all you have to know, and this is where I take my reassurance with my competition, is if my product is better than their product, in the long term, I will beat them. And it doesn't matter how many Ferraris or Lamborghinis they flex, or how many watches they buy, or how many penthouses they visit, or how many times they go to a mansion in Thailand, I'll probably beat them because it's time. And there's lots of case studies around this. So the next lesson, number 8, is that it's all about the quality of your decisions. So if you just think critically with me for a second here, every single decision that you've ever made in your life, and a decision is basically a choice between multiple variables, which is really all life is, it's just binary choices, right? Every single decision you've ever made in your life has led you getting to this point now where you are. And that should be quite empowering, and it should also piss you off a little bit, because where you are right now in your life is your fault, it's your responsibility. It is the sum and aggregate of every decision you've ever made. Now, I'm not discounting the fact that you might have had trauma or bad things happen to you in life. God or the universe might have served you an unlucky hand. But ultimately, 90% of your decisions are within, more than that, like 99% of your decisions are within your control. And this is quite a relieving and freeing thing to me, because what I realized quite early on is that if I wanted to make money and become successful, all I had to do was become better at decision making than the average person. And how do you do that? Well, you have to be more intelligent and smarter. And what that basically means is it's knowledge. When you're looking at decisions and when you're looking at choices, if you and I were looking at a business problem with a decision making problem, and let's say that you were just starting out and I'm where I am now, I've made north of $20 million online. I still have a long way to go entrepreneurially. Like I'm a baby in the scheme of it all. But if we compared our decision-making skills, I would probably out-decide you to the point where I can make the right decision more often than you can. And that's not me trying to say I'm better than you, although technically in that realm I might be. The point is that I just have more knowledge. And I spend nearly all of my spare time reading. And I can actually just give you some examples right now. I spend all of my time in a book. And this is because the smarter you are and the more knowledge you have to draw on and the more worldly your brain, the more laterally you can think in terms of your decision making. And so when you read a book, you won't see the effect of that knowledge for years. But when you read hundreds of them and that knowledge starts to compound, you build this lattice work, this paradigm that is, a force to be reckoned with. And so, I read a lot of history books. This is Plutarch's Lives, Volume 2. I just finished this one on ancient Rome. There's quite a lot. I've got a bunch of books here. This one's the story of philosophy. And you'll notice how ancient Greece, Seneca, Alive, I've got a bunch of other books over here. I won't get too deep into them. And you'll notice the books that I'm reading are history books. And this is an interesting thing, because really the history of humanity and the history of the world is ultimately the history of warfare and military. And honestly, business is a very close cousin to war. And so I don't really read business books. I don't read Harvard Business Review or traditional business books. I read history and I extrapolate lessons from history, and I find the judgment and character of extremely successful people throughout the world, throughout time, and I then apply them to business and myself. Prime example of what I did earlier, where I explained how Augustus's reign towards the end of his career as an emperor started to taper off because he had no competition. You can start to find patterns between your company and what happened in history. And if you want to, make money online, it helps to study empires and the fall and decline of them. Anyway, that's just something I've been doing. Lesson number 9, beyond the quality of your decisions, and building your knowledge so you can make better decisions. Lesson number 9 is to take care of your health. I sacrificed my health for my company and my money, and I've done it multiple times over in the past, and I can tell you that it's just not worth it. The amount of times that I have burned myself out or made myself sick or given myself some real health problems because of the amount of cortisol that I'm releasing into my brain through the stress of work, in the long term, it's worth it, because I'm in a healthy place now. But it's very important you take care of your health and that you prioritize your health above anything, above your work. Because, like I said, the quality of your business and the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your decisions. And your decisions come from where? Well, they come from your brain. And your brain is where? It's in your body. And so if your body is screwed and you're unhealthy, you're going to have all this brain fog, all this anxiety, all this emotion, and you're going to have these terrible outputs and make terrible, emotional, foggy decisions that don't really make any sense. And so it's funny because I wish I knew this earlier, that taking care of my health would actually make me more money than making money. And so really it's very simple. Just eat clean and sleep well and exercise regularly. If you do those 3 things and you prioritize those 3 things and you don't let work get in the way of those 3 things, you'll ultimately become way more successful. My wealth and my business income just exponentially spiked the second I started eating clean, not drinking alcohol, not eating sugar. So do with that what you will. The 10th thing is to remove emotions where possible. Emotion is the enemy to quality decision making. And so what you want to learn to do with your life and your business is try to remove as much emotion as you can from your decision making. This is an extremely difficult thing to do, but it is a skill that you can develop and learn over time. If you are emotional and you are the kind of person that brings your personal life into your business life, you're going to struggle. It's going to be extremely hard for you to build anything great because your head's going to be constantly screwing around with your business. And so, for example, if a client messaged me and said this is the worst program, I hate you, which never happens, but if it did, if I had an emotional response to that and started arguing with my client, suddenly someone could screenshot that, it goes on the internet, now I'm in trouble, now other clients start saying, you've got to remove emotion. And the easiest way to remove emotion is sometimes you can't remove it, but the best strategy is delay. So if something makes you emotional, and this is going to be anywhere in your life, not just in your work, because you can't compartmentalize work and life. You have the same brain for the same circumstances, and your brain works on pattern recognition. So if you're really emotional in your personal life, you're going to be emotional in your business life because your brain can't tell the difference between those 2 things. And so the easiest way to combat emotion in business and in your life is time. And what that basically means is if something happens and it makes you angry, or typically anger is the main form of destructive emotion because it leads to you need to act on that emotion, which is where the problem comes. But if something makes you angry or sad or you're anxious or whatever, just give it a couple of hours or a day and then see how you feel tomorrow, and you'll probably be in a way different spot. So that's that. And then the 11th lesson that I've learned is that you need to become a full stack entrepreneur. And another lesson from history for you here, Napoleon, the guy who kind of just, made France pretty cool in the 1800s or whatever, or 1700s. Napoleon was a full stack emperor. And what full stack basically means is you need to know everything. And you need to know, you need to have an area of expertise in which you are the best in the world at. So for Napoleon, for example, that was conquering and the military life. He was probably one of the best conquerors we've ever seen in the world. But Napoleon was also full stack, which meant that he knew everything about everything else. He wasn't necessarily a complete expert in these other topics, but he was kind of what Google would call a T-shaped person, where you have a lateral level of horizontal knowledge about everything you need to know surrounding the context of your expertise. And then you have a deep level of expertise vertically on one thing. And the reason this is important is because you need to understand the context of the situation. So let's say, for example, this book here, Seneca, A Life. Seneca was a Greek Stoic philosopher, and the woman who wrote this book, Emily Wilson, has written a biography on him. And Emily Wilson needs to be what we would call a full stack historian, where to write a book about Seneca, she needs to be an expert on his life. But also, she needs to have the full stack context of everything else that was happening around Seneca. So she needs to know about the Peloponnesian War, she needs to know about Athens, she needs to know about Sparta, she needs to know about Alexander the Great. She needs to have a full stack. She doesn't have to be an expert on those things, but she has to understand the context in which his life lived. And business is very much the same thing, where you need to know your thing, which is basically your product, the problem you're solving for your customers, the value delivery system you have. You need to know that better than anybody else. But not only that, but in business, you need to develop every other skill as well. So whilst I, for example, my business, what we do is we solve the problem of client acquisition for agency owners, coaches, and consultants. And I'm the best in the world at doing that. Hands down, I don't think anyone else knows it more than I do, or at least has got a better product than me. And that's a dangerous thing to think, because someone could come along and wipe me out if I get too comfortable. I'm also terrified I'm not good enough, which is why I'm good. But anyway, we'll get into that another day. But I know that extremely well. I know that like the back of my hand. I know it better than I know myself. And I also need to know everything else. So I need to know legal agreements. I need to know accounting. I need to know sales management. I need to know sales as a process. I need to know marketing. I need to know ads. I need to know media buying. I need to know operations. I need to know support. I need like every other facet of the business contextualized around my expertise. I still need to understand. And coming back to Napoleon, Napoleon knew a lot about everything. Like he knew how to conquer and he knew how to do that. But the difference between him and the other great generals and marshals that he had is he knew how to govern as well. He knew legal systems. He knew how to build republics. He knew how to hire. He knew how to outsource. He knew how to like run the show basically. He knew how to like do tax reforms, legal reforms, and he knew how to place people into those. I mean, talk about a genius. So I'm not saying you have to be a genius, but I'm just saying that most people with their careers and their lives, most average people, they learn one thing and they get good at one thing, and then they're placed into that one thing and they're siloed. And I learned this from a guy called Mike, who was the CEO of a shoe brand that I used to work for when I was like 17 in the UK. And he came into the office once. He was the CEO. This is like £1 billion company. And I said to him, Mike, I want to start a business. What do I do? He said, do not put yourself into a silo. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, like for example, you're working right now in customer care. You can be good at customer care, but it shouldn't be all you're good at. You need to know marketing, accounting, product development, and literally everything else. So that's basically the 11 lessons that I thought might be helpful to you. I hope they go a long way to making you successful, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.